In Conversation with Marie Hohtanz.
In one of the final paragraphs from Margaret Trudeau's new book, Consequences, she writes, "Perhaps in the end, all that I have done comes back to one simple fact, that I was not intended for political public life. None of it, not the people, not the demands, nor the rules, nor even the rewards. They were not for me, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not shape my character to fit what was required of me." That's very, very revealing. And I wonder what your expectations were when you entered into that marriage as a very young woman marrying the top politician in this country.
Yes.
What were your expectations?
I guess I was very young and idealistic. Certainly Pierre matched perfectly my ideals in terms of what a wonderful, urbane, intelligent, interesting, enthusiastic man he was, and really who knew how to live. And I kept saying to people, my mother particularly, who was so worried about the age difference, "Oh, but he's so young at heart, and it's going to be wonderful." Well, we married really to have children. I was very, very intent on starting a family, and Pierre wanted very much to have children. So at the beginning, the focus was just right. It was sort of, we got married and it was wonderfully happy, and I was right up on a pedestal and had wonderful babies. But what happened was that Pierre and I were living a dream, and our expectations, I think this happens a lot with young marriages. When you marry so young, your expectations are quite different of what the reality is. And sort of as the years went on and I realized how increasingly alienated I felt from my generation, from my friends, from my family, and that I was being left alone more and more and more, and had too much time on my hands. I had too much. The babies were all scrubbed and beautifully taken care of by their nannies, and I would participate as much as they would let me in it all, and I had everything. I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to do anything that a young wife, in the sense that I was supposed I was being a wife and married to be.
But
I
somebody
really
else
wasn't
looking at
liberated.
that life would think, "My God, she has everything."
Yes, but it looks that way, but what I didn't have was any self-esteem. That's what started eroding terribly, was because I felt very guilty when we'd go and out into the public and they'd all stand and cheer me. I think, I don't deserve any cheers. What have I done? And I felt increasingly guilty and increasingly a traitor to my generation, because we're going to change the world and do it properly, and women were going to work and get involved. And I was just being the old bitchy housewife without a house to be wifely to.
Didn't anybody try to prepare you for any of that? Didn't Pierre Trudeau try to prepare you?
Well, he tried to warn me, but I was very convinced that, oh no, it was going to be wonderful. What Pierre and I did for many years was we lived on dreams about when he left politics, when we would build this wonderful house. I remember we spent 1 or 2 years just arguing as to whether we were going to have electricity or not in the house. But this is all at night, candlelight dinners in the large dining room at 24 Sussex, and it never. Suddenly, I realized when René Lévesque was elected to power in Quebec in 1976, I realized that Pierre was going to continue in politics now. He had a new reason to stay in, whereas just before we'd been talking about getting out, and that probably would have saved the marriage. But I realized, no, now he's really in here, and I have no place here. I have nothing, I have no achievements, and I can't do anything. Pierre would say, "Well, Margaret, enrich your mind. Read the French classics, read the Russian novels, and
You sound like him when you do that.
I'm going to go crazy if I just sit around reading novels.
But did
I
you not
live.
want to pursue a degree in child psychology?
Yes. Before we married.
Why wouldn't he go along with that?
He didn't want me to go to university because he was very jealous and possessive of me, as I found most men have this trait, and he felt that it was just an excuse to be with young men, that I was going to go to university. Maybe it was, but I don't think so. But then again, I didn't find any room, and he's quite an intimidating man, and as I was losing my self-esteem, he was starting to really hurt me as well.
Do you ever look back in retrospect and think, you know, if I had been tougher there, if I had said, darn it, I am going back to school, I am taking my degree in child
I
psychology.
had to do what I had to do. Now Pierre has respect for me. Now we get along. Now we're raising the children the way I dream. Now I have my home and the cookies and the milk and the whole thing. Hi, Mom, I'm home in reality. Now I have it. But I had to fight very hard to get it because he certainly wasn't willing to give it to me. He loves to live in a very ideal, abstract, intellectual world. I like to live in the real day-to-day life, you know.
We have to take a break on that note, but we'll be back to continue this conversation with Margaret Trudeau. Back once again, continuing our conversation with Margaret Trudeau. You have been criticized, well, for so many things. I mean, if I started naming them off now, we would run out of time, right? But you've been called a dilettante. You know, you tried photography and you tried acting and writing television. Do you think that that's an unfair criticism?
Definitely. I think it's very hard to find the right vocation, and I think people should take time and try and find, I mean, just to assume that you can go into a job and keep it for the rest of your life and be dedicated to it, that's a very lucky thing if you grow up with one idea in mind. For myself, I just was so unsure. There were so many different things I wanted to do, so many different things I wanted to try, and
of course, everything you tried, you tried in public because
I wasn't left alone.
Front page, yeah,
I wasn't left alone.
The photography,
so all my mistakes were public. Everything was public, which is a hard way to grow up, but nonetheless, I survived it.
What about the photography? I mean, did you really study hard?
Yes,
were you really committed to learning photography?
Yes, I did. I worked. But that I started before I left Pierre, and I was working in Ottawa with a press photographer there and then I went to Algonquin College for a while. That was pretty difficult going as a Prime Minister's wife to a local community college. That had some problems, but photography, I haven't taken a picture in 2 or 3 years, so I guess my dedication to the art, I was so angry when all my cameras were stolen, and I was so broke that I had to, instead of replacing them when the insurance money came, I had to replace them by putting storm doors on my house to cut down my fuel bills.
This business about being broke, the reason you wrote the first book, Beyond Reason, was because you needed the money, and then I think you really got burned because the company went into receivership. Did you ever make any money from that first book?
No, and it made a lot of money. Yes, this is why there is a second book in terms of my financial needs. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written the book. I'd have been very happy just to do my television and to sink into anonymity nicely, but I couldn't because the Beyond Reason. The money, the royalty checks were supposed to start coming to me in September of 1979. I bought my house in October, and a check came for me in December for a substantial amount of money, which would have paid off my house and my mortgage and so forth, and other ones were coming, and it bounced. And that was it. There was no more, so I had bought my house, and mind you, I had been sort of restrained. I hadn't bought a lot of furniture or anything like that, or I ordered some curtains that my mom had to end up paying for and things like that because it just went, and then I was left with a big debt. And a big debt is a hard thing for a woman to deal with. I certainly can't deal with it from my day-to-day work. I don't make enough
money.
Not
working in local television at this station is any example of
and
that.
I think I'm getting equivalent pay to most women in the same position. I'm not getting special high rates or anything. So for me, the only way that I could clear out my debt from Paddington, other than going bankrupt, and I have too much pride, and I feel that I am resourceful and resilient, and I should be able to do it, was by publishing again.
A lot of people think that you received a very large settlement when you and Pierre separated.
Yes, I wonder if Pierre had that
came from.
Gone through his press office. I don't know. He's never given me any money. He has taken over. He took over after Paddington went bankrupt, and he'd won the election. in March, he was feeling in a very good and generous mood, and I had had the children with me most of the time while he was doing the election in Ottawa, and he was very pleased with my new regime of my house and the children, and he saw that that was working, and it was wonderful for the children. The children were really happy. So he decided that to come in and take over my mortgage so that I wouldn't lose my house.
Oh, he's the evil landlord.
Well, he doesn't demand any payments.
So that's good kind of landlord to have.
Yeah.
So there was no alimony, no settlement,
no, and that was my
support,
fault.
child support?
No, well, he kept the children, as you recall.
Yeah.
So, but no, he on the one hand, it was my fault. I'm to blame because as a woman, having been his wife for 6 years and so forth, I had certain rights, legal rights, that I should have had exercised, and I could have had it done any day in the courts. I was so intimidated and so hurt and wounded, and Pierre was, sort of accusing me of only wanting his money and everything. I was saying, who, me? Because I've never seen myself as one of those money-hungry, I wasn't going to be a bitch out in the suburbs. Maybe I shouldn't use that word, out in the suburbs with alimony checks. I was going to work, I was going to make something of myself, and I didn't need him, thank you very much. But I did. Mm-hmm. I was under a tremendous amount of emotional stress, and I think a lot of what I went through could have been avoided if he had been more generous and helped me out for the first 2 years, provided me with a small home, and most married couples, of course, with the Canadian law as it is, get half. When you split, you get half of the furniture and half of the house. Well, Pierre Trudeau, we had no house. We had no furniture. We have a lot of plaques of places we've been, but those don't make a life. So I actually didn't even take any of the possessions because I wanted out at any cost.
Something that really surprised me in reading your book, Consequences, was the fact that although you separated in 1977, you stayed under the same roof, living in an attic room for 2 years? How could you stand
cruelty,
that?
Yes. I had no choice. I had to be with my little boys. I didn't have any place. I couldn't afford even an apartment to have them come over to see me or anything. And Pierre really very much wanted to keep me under his thumb, to try and change my mind and get me to stay and reconcile and so forth and come to my senses. It didn't do that at all. It was just living hell. My advice always to people when they are going through the crisis of marriage breakdown is to make a clean split and get into your own corners and try and work things out and get counseling and get help, and but don't just keep carrying on. Living apart but together under the same roof was really cruel. It was but it was part of, Pierre's was very good at intimidating me. And now we have finally a good relationship because he can't intimidate me anymore. And that feels good.
You're your own person.
I'm my own person.
Did you see the Frost interview by any chance?
Yes, I did.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did.
He spoke very highly of you.
Yes,
you now speak very highly of him.
Yes, I think we both have a lot of respect for each other.
You have
as
a better
parents.
relationship now than you had when
we
you were
have
married?
a much happier marriage, I guess, and it's in a certain sense in terms of family life and our parenting and everything than we ever had.
Is there any possibility of a reconciliation?
No,
Never.
Because we really are irreconcilable as a man to a woman.
And yet you're still not divorced?
No.
Would you not put him through that in his sensitive political position?
Yes. No, I wouldn't do that. And I think that it's coming up 5 years that we've been separated. So at 3 years, you can get a divorce if both parties consent. Well, Pierre would never consent. He would consent under very, very outrageous conditions, which I certainly was not going to consent to or sign my name to. So I quite frankly, I don't feel I need a divorce or want a divorce. We have a very happy relationship, and the children certainly are, I think, happier that we're not divorced. There certainly isn't a marriage there, and I don't. At this stage in my life, I'm not ready for another marriage.
Mm-hmm. You have embarked on a new relationship, though, a live-in relationship with a...
Yes, I share my life with a man who's my age, and he's separated with children as well, and we have so much in common as opposed to what Pierre and I had, which was so much different. And I think Jimmy and I working together in the life that we lead now, helping, supporting each other, independently raising our children and that sort of thing, and the kind of growing up together with someone is very satisfying. I think it makes all the difference. You know, I think people with big differences. I used to idealistically think that, oh, well, I'm going to fill up the parts that are missing in him, and he's going to compliment me for the parts that I'm weak in.
That's the way it's supposed to work, isn't it?
Doesn't, because you end up really not being able to even talk to each other because you have so little in common. You like different things.
I have to ask you about, you know, the kinds of things, bizarre behavior that was blazoned in headlines around the world, the stuff at Studio 54 and the drug business and so on. How much of that was just getting back?
Oh, a lot of it. I was under severe stress. I was a
So
really
you think I'm
desperate
rotten. You haven't
woman.
seen how rotten
You
I can
haven't
be.
seen him. Very self-destructive and masochistic. My just staying at the house was the height of masochism. And it wasn't until I really got into very good psychoanalysis that I started to realize what I was doing to myself and why I was so angry, and all the drug use and all the sort of the irreverent
how much
things.
of that behavior was, in fact, drug-induced?
I don't think that much. We're
No?
just talking about soft drugs. They don't really change your life. They were just symptoms, part of trying to deal with this deep, deep pain in me for the failed marriage and feeling that myself to be a pretty worthless person.
But you talk in the book about the, you know, the cocaine during the days in London, for instance, and the fact that the cocaine gets you up, you need something to bring you down, so now it's Valium to
terrible
bring you
cycle,
down. I mean, you must have really been scrambled at times.
Well, and it wasn't, I mean, I wasn't using as much. For one thing about cocaine is that it's an extremely expensive drug, and quite frankly, I don't like it. I don't like what it does to me. I don't like what it does to other people, but it was very fashionable. It is very fashionable. And I am so glad that I'm now in my life, I can just say, no, thanks. You know, I just don't want it because I know what it does to me and how it makes me react. But at that time, I would have tried anything to stop the hurt inside. What I didn't realize that the only way that I could stop the hurt inside was for me to start respecting myself and begin living a good day-to-day existence.
Drugs of a very different kind. Prescription drugs.
Yes. Now those are the dangerous
Now those are
ones.
dangerous,
Yes.
and you know all about that. I mean, one of the psychiatrists had you on lithium, which is one of the...
just dreadful.
You said it was
really
like having a chemical lobotomy.
It really was. And he told me, looking me straight in the eye, he said, Margaret, you're going to find that one of the side effects of lithium is that you don't feel very creative, and you're not, you know, you won't have the same kind of drive and enthusiasm and humor and all sort of listing all of the things that I think makes life wonderful. Exactly. And in fact, that's exactly what it did to me. In a way, I guess it was good because I was on lithium when the news from Paddington Press came, and I was so zonked out I didn't care. I mean, oh, so what? It wasn't until I got off of it and started facing the horror of my reality.
How did you get off? Did you do that yourself?
Yes, yes. I wasn't being given the best medical care in the world, and I was abusing it as well, and that I wasn't showing. I had to go down to Toronto for appointments. Well, I couldn't even go to the IGA down the street, let alone go to Toronto. So I was having my blood tested regularly because it's a very toxic drug to make sure I had the right level. But what women should really watch out for is that they know they need something. I needed something. I was anxious and upset, and I was crying all the time, or I was laughing hysterically, or whatever. I was doing crazy things. My judgment seemed impaired. I wasn't eating. I was thin. I was, you know, and I needed something. Well, the doctor will give you Valium, or something, lithium in the extreme, but Valium, and say, well, no, take some of this, and oh, phew, for a little while you don't feel so bad. But what happens is it builds up, and you're never dealing with what it is that really is making you tense and uptight and angry. And that's what you really, and you don't need to be all Valiumed up in order to be able to face that. You have to have all your wits about you and all your strength, physical and mental, in order to battle what's wrong in your life and change it.
Yeah.
You know?
We have to take just one more break, and we'll return with Margaret Trudeau right after this. Back with Margaret Trudeau, and just a couple of minutes left now. You mentioned the rage and the hurt and those kinds of feelings, and those words turn up all the way through this book, especially the word rage. Did you ever get to the bottom of it? Did you ever find out what you were raging against?
I think so. I think so. I think that I had failed. I'd failed in my choice of a mate in terms of that. And I had to come to terms with my own failure, my own weakness. I had, with my bad judgment, with the things that instead of what I was always trying to do was raging away that they're hurting me or he's hurting me, and I realized, no, it's me hurting myself. My rage is that I just don't love myself enough. I don't feel adequate or whole as a person. And it went sort of quite back down into growing up and everything. And now I think that's why it's very good to get help. We were talking about that a little bit about the psychiatry, and I know that I wasn't served well except by one psychiatrist who gave me back my life.
This is the New York.
The one in New York. And I know that there's a lot of, certainly psychiatrists and psychologists everywhere, and they can help you tremendously.
Is that what turned it around for you?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah. He made me start believing in myself and convinced me that I wasn't, first of all, my big worry was my drug use. And I thought I was just a total degenerate, and what a huge problem I had. And he made me aware that, no, that wasn't my problem. My problem was something else, but the drugs I was making as my problem, so that I didn't have to face what really was bothering me. And now I think working and being out of myself and not being so self-indulgent, I've had in the kind of job I'm doing, I'm not, the focus isn't on me anymore, it's on my guest and what they're, and it's wonderful. Those all things in day-to-day living is what heals a woman.
Right. Again, you've been criticized for including in this book the sexual episodes with the likes of Ryan O'Neill and Jack Nicholson and so on. I wonder why you felt that you would have to tell it, because really they don't flatter you, those stories.
No.
They're humiliating.
Yes, they are.
Why would you tell us that?
Because I wanted to get clear as how low I had become or was making myself and hurting myself, so it made sense of the process of changing and getting out of a life and changing. I do believe that people can change and can change their life and they can do marvelous things with themselves if they want to and if they understand the problems that they're facing. Certainly my being used by men such as Jack and Ryan, I did include them, was because they are those type of men. That's their world. They're playboys who, they use women and women use them, and it's a game. And that's the game I was involved in. I hope that, people won't fantasize, will sort of get more realistic about their fantasies, because I know a lot of women do fantasize a lot about how wonderful it would be to ride off in the sunset. No matter, he could have been the postman, Ryan O'Neill. He could have been Jack Nicholson, could have been a local vet. It doesn't matter. What the reality was that I was in rebellion on the rebound from a marriage, and I was really involved in a lot of things that lacking in judgment, lacking in tact, lacking in respect.
Any more books?
I'd like to do a Japanese cookbook. No more biographies.
That's your great interest, isn't it? Cooking. No more biographies.
No.
Perhaps I read that you said maybe some trashy novel or something.
I think I was in response to a question that I wasn't very nice.
So you stay with the television?
Yes.
Be the housefrau, do the Japanese cooking,
I think
entertaining, and looking after your kids.
And raising my children,
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.